So let's move way back into time to the late 70s, notably I think 1978, 79. So it appears that you've had a combination of inspirational artists, DJs, studio recording, and even home audio recording equipment, home audio playback equipment that blended together to lead you into the world of DJing and production. Can you tell us a bit about the combination of all those elements that kickstarted Ben Liebrand as a DJ and producer?
Yeah. So, as a young guy, I was very interested in electronic music. So, at the time when most of the people were dancing to the soul tracks and the early Tramps stuff, I was at that time more interested in Kraftwerk, Jean-Michel Jarre, all the electronic stuff, and had a real interest for the combination of electronics and music. Isao Tomita was a thing I listened to a lot in high school, and the electronic music and the creation of electronic music was something that really fascinated me. And then in 1976, one morning, the clock radio flicked on at the alarm time, and the DJ was playing the B side of a Donna Summer single. And the B side of that 7-inch, the B side, had I Feel Love by Donna Summer. And that kind of melded for me all my interest in electronics with dance music. And that was kind of for me the first revelation I experienced with that combination. And that really set me on a path of following what Giorgio Moroder was doing, and led to my huge interest in dance music. So those were actually the very first steps and the very first inspirations to what it all became.
Were you self-taught back then in every aspect of DJing, studio recording and mixing? And because there's no internet, there was no manuals, there was no how-to or go-to, there was no courses. And whereabouts did you actually work on your early productions?
It was just in my bedroom, and in my bedroom that goes all the way up to 1988. So I had gold and platinum productions awards hanging on my wall whilst I was still working from my bedroom. Coming back to the self-taught thing, um, I I was actually being a light jockey in a club near Nijmegen, and a guy was the DJ there, Huip Luiten, and he brought with him the thing about mixing. He was just returning from the United States, and he heard it there, and he was trying that out as well. So that's the first time I heard mixing, and I didn't even hear the mixing. The only thing I heard is that he was playing pop music way faster than it normally should run, and I was wondering why he was doing that. And then it turned out that that kind of flowed into the next track, which obviously was the tempo, what he was aiming for. But he was just combining the record, so he was not looking into BPMs. He was not looking into the technical side of it. He was just trying stuff and see if he can line stuff up, and that's it. So I heard the mixing, but Hype was not a nerd in any way or fashion. So um, we didn't even have one single line, one single sentence of conversation about the mixing. It was just something that I picked up on, that he was doing that. And soon after, I found on the Vanguard label numbers with some mysterious acronym BPM behind it. No idea what that meant, but I did notice that one of them had 117 Players Association, turn the music up. Another one had 132. And then it was like, would it be that that kind of indicates how fast the record is? Later, I found out that what BPM stands for. And then I, got a decent stopwatch and started counting all my the tempos of all my records, and that kind of brought a structure in my record box, where obviously starting with the slow records and going faster up, and that was the first structure in what music I was playing, and that obviously brought some of the records together, which had a similar tempo, and it was these baby steps, just figuring out how stuff worked, and yeah, not having a reference at the time. That all the time, together with my huge passion for the technical side, the amplifiers, the speakers, whatever it took to play the records, whatever it took to record what I was doing, and that kind of was the combination that kind of pushed my interest forward.
In the then non-digitally connected world, Ben, did you actually realize the full impact at that time that those pioneering works had, both on DJs and the music loving audience, or was this something you discovered later on?
Oh, I discovered that way later on, and the way it went back then is that I was spinning in a club called the Keizer Karel in the Netherlands, which stands for Emperor Charles, and I was DJing there, and I was already experimenting with two copies of a record and extending breaks and that kind of stuff, and then some guys came up to me and heard the editing I did. One of the first edits they heard was probably my edit of "Don't You Want Me, Baby" by the Human League, where in my edit the boy says something, the girl answers immediately. The boy says the next line, the girl answers immediately. And they asked if I could help them with an edit, with an actual edit, so cutting the tape, and I did that for them, and that found its way to the record company. The record company guys owning the record company went golfing with the guy who ran Radio Veronica. They came into a conversation about Lex Harding from Radio Veronica said, here's stuff about mixing DJs that don't even talk anymore. They just play the music and kind of blend it into each other in some kind of way. And then they said, oh, well, you have to talk to Ben then, because that's what Ben does all the time. And that landed me the job at Radio Veronica. And I indeed became the first DJ on Dutch national radio who didn't say a word. And we even had a little interview prior to In the Mix, where Erik de Zwart would ask me a couple of questions, and I would be there in the studio in front of the open mic, and I just wouldn't answer. And then he would ask the next question, and it silence. And the next question, silence. And then you said, well, ladies and gentlemen, by now you probably understand that this is the DJ that does not talk. He just plays music, and he just mixes that music into each other. And that was kind of the introduction of In the Mix.
Do you have a very precise pattern or schedule of workflow? For example, being totally absorbed in one project until absolute completion, or are you able to pop in and out of projects as and when the time or the opportunity allows, Ben?
Well, back in the day, and I'll move a little bit aside and point here at all the hardware which is in the rack here. Back in the day, it was all hardware. So you had your mixing desk, and at that time, talking about the time of You Sexy Thing, no, a little bit later, 88, 89, I had a mixing desk with 67 channels, which was enough to have one mix-up on one end of the desk and have another mix-up on the other side of the desk, which enables me to be working on a production and in the weekend make a mini mix on the other side of the mixing desk, because I would just mute channels 1 to 24, and I still had enough channels to set up the mini mix as well.
Wow.
So that enabled me to work on two projects in between. Nowadays it is all Total Recall, and it's all within Mac, and that enables me to pop in and out productions all the time. the huge advantage is this. Say, for example, I am working on 3 projects. I have to finish a mini mix, and I'm working on another project, and then the record company comes back to me and says, "Hey, can you work on an edit of something?" Um, and I'm working on the beginnings of another remix. Now I can work on these 3, do whatever I feel that needs to be done on one thing. I make an intermediate mix, open up the next project, work on that one, make an intermediate mix. And that's what I do. So I have all these intermediate mixes. I'll just stick them on my phone. And wherever I'm in the car, walking the dog or whatever, and have time to listen to these mixes, I'll just listen to them. And that's me listening to what I've done without seeing the screen in front of me. So it's just concentrating on the music and not being distracted on all the bars and all the, the whole arrangement on my screen, which is a different experience. And people should really try that. So then I'll have on my phone version 12, version 15, version 32, or whatever. I'll listen the whole thing through, and I'll just remember, like, that needs to go. That's 8 bars too long. The break should be 8 bars longer. The song doesn't introduce itself the way I want. I know it's an exciting song, but the way it builds now doesn't give me that excitement. So I'll try to find a new way of building into the song that gives me the excitement the rest of the song has. So I listen to these intermediate mixes one after each other. And when I open the project, I have no trouble whatsoever remembering all the things that annoyed me. And basically, that's what remixing is. Remixing is getting to work on a track and feeling that stuff starts to come together. And from that point on, is just taking away everything that annoys you.
In other words, only the most essential needed elements are used without overcluttering the piece. Like everything that you add has a reason to exist there, and
Yeah.
you don't need to add any more of it. So, can you tell us a bit more about my observation
Yeah.
of your work in that respect?
When you're doing a mini mix for radio, and do remember that the mini mixes I make, most of the mini mixes are intended to be played on radio once. So I work all day from morning till evening, and that's including the remix I did for Phil Collins in the Air Tonight, was intended to be made as 7 minutes of entertainment on radio. That's it. That it became a big hit, and now I've got a silver disc hanging on my wall. That came all afterwards, but 7 minutes of entertainment on the radio. So if I'm making a mini mix, it is absolutely no use spending an hour and a half on a shaker, which might be on the left channel at minus 20 dBs for 16 seconds. It's no use. So I'm very aware of the fact that when I'm making a mini mix, and this mini mix is probably going to be heard by the majority of people just once, that every minute of work I put into that should translate into something you hear in the end. So you become very economic in that way, and you become very aware of that you should prioritize stuff, and you shouldn't be mucking about with stuff that doesn't come across. You should concentrate on the stuff that makes sense. You should clear out of the way anything that gets in the way of all the stuff that needs to make sense. And if there is a obviously very costly horn section in there, but it doesn't work, or it just works for a couple of notes, then you should cherry pick what works and discard what doesn't.
What was the catalyst to launch the Grand 12-inch series, and some of the difficulties involved in sourcing, licensing, and restorations of the master tapes recordings? And also, was and is Sony always involved?
Yes, the thing it sparked was the following. I was working. I think it was on the Grand Mix Disco Edition 2. What happened then is that instead of the 12-inch version, which I requested, I got sent a 1 minute 45-second snippet, which at the end you'd hear the next song being blended in, and I was like, "What the hell is going on? How can the person responsible for sending me a master send me a 1 minute 45 snippet, which happened to come from my own grand mix?" So then it kind of
Smell
turned
the
out
irony.
that yes. Then it turned out that the girl who was asked to send me the master, and it was Robert Palmer, you're in my system, which was asked to send me the master of the 12-inch version, didn't have a clue whatsoever, probably what a master is of a record. So she just went through some CDs, and the first occurrence she found of uh, Robert Palmer, you're in my system, she ripped from a CD, which happened to be my own Grand Mix CD, which resulted in a snippet with not a proper beginning and not a proper end, because it was just apart from a continuous mix, and send it out. And then I actually got in a bit of an argument with the record company at that time, saying that, if people nowadays are still willing to pay for a proper version of a song they love, if they're still, they're not ripping it, they're not stealing it, they're not whatever, downloading it from the internet, they're actually willing to pay for a proper version. It's just disgraceful that that proper version cannot be supplied, because there aren't any people at the record company anymore that know where the master is. There are a whole bunch of record companies that have discarded, as in thrown in the bin, uh, dumped in a dumpster, their tape collection,
Crazy.
which is just crazy. And that kind of sparked my quest is a big word, but my eagerness to preserve the 12 inch versions I love. And I got together with Sony and explained, my, my grievances, and suggested that we should make a series which tries to preserve the 12-inch versions, which I consider grand, therefore grand 12 inches, which, really 12 inches versions that stand out. And obviously, you're talking about the original Donna Summer, the Patrick Cowley Donna Summer, beautiful tracks by Harry Thuman, Gino Socio, all the stuff that really got me going in the music business. And that became a real expedition to find these masters.
Going back to 1993, what was it in 93 that halted the broadcast, release, or even construction of a grand mix for that year, Ben?
Well, one of the things was, as I told you earlier, that making these grand mixes and not having any feedback at all. And the only feedback I basically had for the last couple of years is that, you can use some expletives for that. Some not so kind people were bootlegging them and were putting them out, which put me in a really odd situation. First of all, I wasn't the guy that was putting them out, but I was regarded as the guy that was putting them out. So many people were, giving me a little bit of a snigger when I told them, like, it's not me that's putting out these bootlegs. Then the record stores where I would buy my records would obviously tell anybody and everybody, "Oh, Ben Liebrand buys his records here." Um, then it came to the point, like, "Can you tell me who's actually selling you these bootlegs? Where are they coming from?" "No, we can't tell you that." It's like, what the hell is going on? You know, you are advertising with the fact that I'm buying all my records amongst you, your record stores, and then when I ask you, help me out, who is doing this to me? So it became a sour experience that
Mm.
whenever I put out a grand mix, that other people were taking it and making money on it, and whole bunches of people thought that I was behind the whole thing, whilst I wasn't, and there was no way of convincing them, because all I would get was a silly snigger back. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So it became a sour thing at the end, and that plus the fact that I was by myself in the studio with a technician, which who was also not really interested what was going on. The anticlimax thing was a thing that in 1992 I told myself, like, okay, this is it. I made 10 from 83 till 92. It's done.
For your live DJ gigs, what is the technical and creative preparation involved, both audio and visual, for such gigs? And plus, what do you strive to deliver as the audience experience for those attending?
Being a DJ for so many years, and having bought the original vinyl copies of Good Times and all those hits, having bought them myself, having bought the Menergy by Patrick Cowley, um, Change, Lover's Holiday, the album. Um, I have had these records since then, so you can imagine that if you are kind of, in my case, I have kind of specialized, profiled myself in disco and that era from late 70s to early 90s. I can play the whole shebang from anything from back then till now, but that is where my love is. But if you have known these records for so long, that at a certain point you're like, okay, I want to play that track, but I only want to play the first verse, and I want to play the first bridge and the first verse. Sorry, uh, yeah, verse, bridge, chorus, and then I want to get into the break. So I make a shorter edit of the original track, but I don't add bass drums. I don't add rhythms. It's the original mixes as they appeared back then. And so I make the mixes, and then I'm like, okay, I love this track. It has a 4-bar break, which isn't enough. Then I'll extend the break so I have more break to work with. So I come up with my versions of these tracks, which still have the original sound. And being, having played these tracks so many times, I want to keep it interesting for myself as well. So rather than just making a cross from one track to the other, I'm like, okay, I'm in the key of E. I'm going from this track to that track. How about in that 8-bar transition or 16-bar transition, I find some other a cappella which will match the key, which will match the energy, which will match the groove, and I'll mixing the acapella. And the moment I'm mixing the acapella, I'll also be starting the next track. So whilst this acapella is running, I'll be making a transition from the music from one to the other. So have 3 tracks going on, and in certain occasions I'll have, this might be a little bit empty, I'll have the chords from a 4th track on the last player, which will also kind of build that whole transition. So I've been working this way and starting a cappellas whenever they needed to be started, be it on the 1, be it on the upbeat for the 1, be it 3/16 before the 1, be it 6/16, 7/16 before the 1. So very odd places to start the a cappella. That meant that a thing like autosync would probably mess me up, because the autosync then maybe doesn't know, does he intend to have that thing start on the clap or on the next beat, or what's going on here? So as I had already kind of mastered that way of mixing without using sync, I'm still not using sync.
And what's great for the not only the Mastermix audience, but of course your global fan base for many years, is that you've completed Grand Mix 93, and it's going to be available on Mastermix very soon. So this is something incredibly exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
That missing element from the history,
Well, it's something that we are now mentioning kind of in our conversation, but a lot of people hearing this interview for the first time obviously did not expect that. But yes, indeed, we took great effort to make it possible that the Grand Mix 93 will be released on Mastermix, which I, by the way, didn't know at the time when I was making it. Because at the time I was making it, we'd actually planned to do a rerun of the Grand Mix 1983. And I had kind of booked the whole month of December off planning to do nothing but go Christmas shopping. And then I told my Brenda it would be a fantastic stunt if we announce Grand Mix 1983 is going to have a rerun at the traditional time at the end of the year. In fact, this time it was on the 30th, not on the 31st. It would be a fantastic stunt if I would tell nobody and would just make a Grand Mix 1993, because there's never been one. So I just got started on it, and it started to come together fairly fast, fairly smoothly, fairly quickly. And obviously, with also the techniques, all the technology you have today gives you so many more possibilities of making a certain transition, where on vinyl you would not be able to make such a transition. And it came together so fluently. Yeah, then recently we got in contact, and I'm so stoked about having the possibility of releasing the Grand Mix 93 to the audience.